All right, everyone, buckle up because today we're going deep. We're talking brain imaging.
Yeah, we're going to be looking at how we can actually see inside the brain.
I know, right? It's like something out of science fiction,
Hmm.
except it's real. And it's helping us understand the brain like never before.
Absolutely. And we're going to be digging into a section called Basics of Brain Imaging Techniques to see how it all
This
works.
is going to be so cool. So for those of us who haven't spent much time in a neurology lab,
Mm.
what exactly is brain imaging?
Well, you can think of it like taking a picture of the brain.
Okay, so we get to see what's going on in there.
Exactly. But it's not just a still picture. We can actually see the brain in action, watch how different parts light up when you think or feel or do different things, and all of that without having to do any surgery. Pretty amazing, right?
No kidding. So no cracking open skulls or anything. This is all non-invasive.
Totally non-invasive. That's one of the things that makes brain imaging so revolutionary.
So let's talk about the tools of the trade. I heard of things like MRI and CT scans. Are those types of brain imaging?
Yes. MRI and CT are two of the most common brain imaging techniques. Think of them like different lenses you can use to examine the brain. MRI, which stands for magnetic resonance imaging, uses magnets and radio waves to create these really detailed images.
Okay, so magnets and radio waves.
Hmm?
How does that actually show us the brain?
So the magnets create a strong magnetic field around the head, and this field interacts with the atoms in your body, in particular, hydrogen
And
atoms.
this allows us to see more.
Well, different tissues in the brain have different amounts of hydrogen atoms, and they respond to the magnetic field in different ways. The MRI machine detects these subtle differences and uses them to create incredibly detailed images of the brain's structure.
Wow, that's incredible. So MRI is like the high definition option for looking inside the brain.
Yeah.
What about CT scans then? How do those work?
CT scans, or computed tomography, use X-rays to create images of the brain. They're really good at showing us bone structures, so if someone has a head injury, a CT scan can quickly tell us if there's a skull fracture or any bleeding.
Okay, so MRI uses magnets, CT uses X-rays.
Hmm.
So how do doctors know which one to use? It does depend on what they're looking for, right?
Yeah, exactly. If a doctor suspects a stroke, they might order a CT scan to quickly see if there's any bleeding in the brain. But if they're looking for something more subtle, like a brain tumor or signs of multiple sclerosis, they'd probably go for an MRI because it provides much more detail about soft tissues.
It's kind of like choosing the right tool for the job.
Mm.
Now, I'm really curious about this thing called fMRI. We can actually see the brain in action with this one, right?
Right. fMRI, or functional MRI, is like the action hero of brain imaging. It measures brain activity by tracking changes in blood flow.
Wait, so how does blood flow tell us what the brain is doing?
Well, when a part of your brain is active, it needs more energy, and that energy comes from
Blood. It's got to be blood.
exactly. The blood carries oxygen and glucose to the active brain cells. So with fMRI, we can actually see which parts of the brain are working harder when you're doing different tasks.
That is so wild. So, like, if I was looking at a picture of a cat, you could see the part of my brain that processes visual information light up.
Yes, you got it. And we could also see which parts of your brain are involved in recognizing that it's a cat, and maybe even the parts that are triggering memories or emotions associated with cats.
This is mind-blowing. It must have revolutionized our understanding of the brain, being able to actually see it working like this.
Oh, absolutely. Brain imaging has completely transformed how we study the brain. It's helping us make huge strides in diagnosing and treating brain diseases, from Alzheimer's disease to depression to traumatic brain injuries.
So, for example, how is it helping with Alzheimer's disease?
Well, with brain imaging, we can actually see these amyloid plaques, which are a hallmark of Alzheimer's, building up in the brain years before any symptoms even appear.
Wow, that's incredible. So we can potentially catch it early.
Exactly. And that gives us a window to potentially intervene early or maybe even develop treatments to slow down or prevent the disease altogether. It's really exciting stuff.
It is exciting. And it sounds like there are so many other uses for brain imaging, too.
Oh, yeah. We're using it to study everything from addiction and anxiety to autism and how the brain changes as we age. There are even researchers using brain imaging to develop new ways to communicate with people who are completely paralyzed.
Whoa. The possibilities seem almost endless. But with such powerful technology, are there ethical considerations we need to think about?
Definitely. Brain imaging gives us access to incredibly personal information about how someone's brain works. So we have to be really careful about protecting people's privacy
Hmm.
and making sure this technology is used responsibly. We don't want to get into a situation where brain imaging is used to discriminate against people or make decisions about them without their consent.
Yeah, it's like anything powerful. It can be used for good or for bad. So, as we move forward with this amazing technology, it's important to remember the ethical implications.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground today. We've seen how brain imaging allows us to peer inside the brain, understand how different parts work together, and even diagnose diseases earlier than ever before. It's revolutionized how we study and treat the brain, but it's crucial to use this powerful tool ethically and responsibly. Now, before we wrap up, I have a question for everyone listening. If you could have your brain imaged, what would you be most curious to learn about? Think about it and maybe do some exploring on your own. It's a fascinating world out there.